The stars looked peaceful from orbit. Peaceful lies. They always did, even when entire civilizations burned beneath their light. The Outer Rim Station, Class 9 Exile Protocol Enforcement Post, drifted in silence above Dean Prime. It was once a proud world, green, fertile, advanced. Now it was ashen silence, wiped out by a single retaliatory strike. And I, Jonah Reeve, Earthborn convict and veteran of the suppression wars, was orbiting the aftermath, watching through a cracked viewport smeared with dried blood that wasn't mine. They said humans were banned, that we were a mistake, that the galaxy had tried us, tested us, and judged us guilty. We weren't born cruel. We just learned faster. After Earth was glassed by the Federated Civic Order, we weren't given a chance to rebuild. We weren't even allowed to grieve. Instead, the FCO broadcasted as a necessary purging of instability. That was the exact word they used. Purging. They didn't ban humans because we were weak. They banned us because we survived everything they threw at us. And we never forgot. The footage. Oh, they didn't want it released. Not to the outer territories. Not to the core world where senators sat in gold-plated chambers debating ethics while sipping synthetic wine and pretending they hadn't funded genocide. But one file slipped through. One 32-minute segment recorded by a defense drone left running during the Dean Prime liberation. That footage broke the silence. And I was in it. It started 2 weeks ago. I was still locked up in the belly of Station 6A, the kind of place where they shoved the forgotten. My cell was smaller than a coffin and smelled like recycled piss. I hadn't seen sunlight in 4 years, not since New Geneva fell. They never let humans walk free after Earth fell. You either got drafted for suicide missions or tossed into orbital cages. I'd earned myself a long sentence for unauthorized retaliation during a joint op with a Centauri guard. What that really meant was I snapped the neck of a Zenith diplomat after watching him laugh over a pile of human corpses. Yeah, I guess I'm the unstable one. Anyway, I was riding away when the alarms went off. Not the usual prisoner riot klaxons. No, this was different. Deep vibration, hull shake. You feel it in your bones before the lights even flicker. Invasion. The FCO claimed no species would dare launch attacks on their stations, but even the grandest tyrant makes enemies. I didn't know at the time who was coming. I only knew they weren't here to save us. The guards left in a hurry, abandoning their posts. Some tried to initiate lockdown, but the system failed. Something had overridden station protocols. And then silence, until I heard them. Footsteps. Not the heavy stomp of synthetics or the clicking of insectoids. No, this was different. Rhythmic, measured, human. They said humans had been scattered, disorganized, broken. They were wrong. I heard the hiss of cutting torches outside my cell, then the shriek of sparking metal. My door slid open, and in walked a man I hadn't seen in nearly a decade. He looked older, rougher. One eye was synthetic now. The scars across his face weren't there the last time we stood side by side in the burning ruins of Capital Terra. "Jonah," he said flatly, "you ready to finish what we started?" I almost laughed. Instead, I stood. "Where the hell have you been, Maddox?" His grin was sharp. "Recruiting." He tossed me a rifle. Not standard issue, modified plasma rail. Human-made, brutal, efficient, reliable. He handed me a data pad with one file on it. Dean Prime Massacre. Do not delete. I opened it and watched. I saw what they did to our people, to the children, the way they tested weapons on villages, dissected prisoners alive for xenogenetic insight, and then laughed as they erased towns off the map. It was more than murder. It was extermination. And they filmed it. They were proud of it. Until that drone, hidden in a broken scout mech, recorded something they didn't expect, something they couldn't hide, us coming back. I watched the footage in silence, my fingers trembling, not from fear, but from the kind of fury that seeps into marrow and becomes something more permanent than pain. Maddox stood behind me as I finished the last frame. 32 minutes of hell. 32 minutes that should have never been buried. I knew what came next. There was no going back from this. I set the data pad down slowly. "They buried this?" Maddox nodded. "FCO. blacked out of the net grid. Anyone who tried to talk about Dean Prime got hit with treason charges or just disappeared. But it made its way into the underground streams. Somebody on the inside slipped the raw file to us. I stared at the rifle in my lap. Human steel. No fancy alien alloys. No sleek tech or diplomatic signature safeties. Just iron coils and wrath. You break into a Class 9 exile station just to hand me this? I asked. Maddox shrugged. You're not the only one we pulled. We've been building crew, quietly off-grid, underground. We call ourselves Section 0. Sounds dramatic. It's not a name. It's a classification. We're the ones who don't exist. The walk through the station corridors was surreal. Power was out in most sectors. The auto turrets had been disabled. Prison blocks were open. Some inmates had scattered. Others were dead, killed not by Maddox's people, but by each other. That's what happens when you lock monsters in a cage too long and then leave the door open. The smell of blood and ozone clung to the air. I saw a dozen bodies, guards, prisoners, maybe both. No one stopped us. I recognized a few faces in the group Maddox had assembled. Nara, the sniper who'd lost her left hand during the Black Coil incident. Dirk, a demolition specialist they used to call the Quiet Bomb. Even Teller, the communications hacker who once breached his Lothian mothership's entire mainframe, using nothing but a repurposed toaster core. But none of them mattered as much as the ship. We boarded through a breach in the hangar wall. Still steaming from the impact charge Maddox's crew had used to force entry. The vessel was compact, lean, and deadly, a far cry from the bulky FCO patrols or clunky prison ferries. It had no insignia, no registry, no beacons. That meant one thing, freedom, but I knew better than to think freedom was what Maddox was really offering. This wasn't a rescue. This was a call to arms. You're not done yet, he said as the bay door sealed behind us. You think they erased us. You think they killed Earth and got away clean. But they forgot one thing. He leaned in closer, voice lowered to a growl. They forgot what happens when you corner something human. Part 2, the mission. In the mess hall of the ship, a cramped chamber lit by cold, flickering panels. Maddox laid out the plan. There's a relay station outside the Tyrant Belt. FCO uses it to monitor independent traffic and sensor data across 7 systems. If we get that footage into their core node, the suppression net collapses for 20 minutes. That's all we need. Nara chimed in. Enough time to copy flood and redistribute to every unlock stream in the grid. From backwater traders to core world bureaucrats. Everyone will see what they did. Teller nodded. And once the truth's out, the tide changes. People are scared to speak out now because they think we're gone. But if they see what was done to Dean Prime, and they see us still breathing, they'll remember we're not extinct. We're just pissed, I said. Maddox smiled. Exactly. But I saw the hesitation behind the smiles, the tension behind the bravado. They all knew what we were doing wasn't just a data op. This was a declaration of war. A war we'd already lost once. Won't be long before the FCO notices a leak. I muttered. They'll hunt us down before we even breach the relay. Dirk chuckled. Let them. I've been waiting to pay those bastards back. Nara raised her synthetic hand. They took my kid, spliced her DNA for testing. If I get to burn one lab down before I die, it'll be worth it. One by one, they shared their stories. Not out of sentiment, but fuel. Every wound was a reason. Every scar was a map. And me? I kept mine quiet. Earth didn't leave me with much to talk about except ashes. The ship dropped out of hyperslip 4 hours later. We were in the dark zone, a gravity-neutral corridor outside regulated space. The only stars here were cold and distant, and the relay station floated like a parasite, clinging to a dead rock. Broadcast radius is 3 AU, Teller said. Once we plug in the file, it'll ping across half the belt before they can shut it down. Security? I asked. For patrol cruisers, 2 automated drone rings, and a long-range FCO Corvette. Fun, Maddox muttered. We'll do it old school, fast, brutal, and loud. He looked at me. You'll be on strike team 1 with me. I nodded. Didn't need to ask why. The breach was chaos. just like the old days. Dirk laid down EMP pulses that scrambled the outer drones. Our cloaked skiff slipped past the patrol cruisers using deflection plating stolen from abandoned Takari tech. Maddox led the charge, direct, ruthless, tactical. Every step we took was bought with a bullet. Inside the relay station, alarms screamed as we pushed forward. The FCO had trained its security in drills and simulations. But real war, real human vengeance, they weren't ready for that. I dropped 3 guards in the first hallway. Plasma bolts grazed my shoulder, but I didn't feel the pain, just the recoil, the rhythm of the fight, the smell of burning metal and fried circuits. My rifle hissed and spat death like a thing alive. Maddox moved like a ghost beside me. 2 shots, 1 knife, no hesitation. We cleared the comm center in 6 minutes. Teller patched into the mainframe, while Nara covered the hallway. Her rifle clicked and boomed in clean, surgical bursts. "Uploading now," Teller shouted. 1 minute to spread. We held the doors, shoulder to shoulder. Maddox reloaded calmly. "You feel that?" he asked me, not looking away from the door. "What?" That moment right before everything changes. When the upload hit, the lights across the station flickered and then stabilized. Teller grinned. It's in every free stream. Pirate Net, black markets, open grid, core-fed mirrors. Even some of the military channels. Maddox tapped his earpiece. "All units, pull back to extraction. Mission complete." It should have ended there. It didn't, because the FCO hadn't sent just 1 corvette. They'd sent 4. Teller's smile died. "We've got multiple slip points lighting up. They traced the data burst. They're coming in heavy." Maddox didn't flinch. "Then we bleed them here." I took position at the upper barricade, watching the flickers of light as ships emerged from hyperslip. Each one was painted black and silver, FCO elite enforcers. And for the first time in years, I smiled. They brought their best. I muttered. Maddox nodded. "Good. So, did we—" The fighting lasted hours. The station buckled under the weight of the siege. Debris drifted through the halls. Fire tore through the oxygen systems. We lost Dirk in the reactor core. He took out 20 of them with one last detonation, screaming defiance into their secure channels as the core melted around him. Nara was hit protecting a civilian. Tech, we pulled out of the server wing. She died slow, whispering her daughter's name. Teller stayed behind to wipe our presence from the system. Last I saw of him, he was laughing, blood in his teeth, as he fried the FCO's trace code with a live wire to the temple. And me? I made it back with Maddox. We left the station on a shuttle barely holding together. The ship's hull groaned. Systems failed. But as we broke orbit, we saw it. We saw the flicker of a dozen signals, lighting up, rebroadcasts, pirate streams, civilian feeds, human settlements lighting up again. The footage had spread. The galaxy had seen Dean Prime. They had seen what the FCO did. And for the first time since Earth was destroyed, they saw us, alive, angry, and coming back. Maddox looked out the viewport as the stars twisted back into slip space. His voice was quiet, low. "You think they'll listen now?" I shook my head. "No, but they'll fear." He smiled. This time it wasn't a grin. It was a warning. "Good." Part 3. The cost. The shuttle coughed and shook like a dying animal as we limped through the edge of slip space. Every few seconds, a panel would spark or a low rumble would echo through the hull, like it was begging us to just let it fall apart. Maddox sat across from me, silent, stripped of his body armor. Blood dried across his temple, but his eyes were still sharp. He hadn't said a word since we jumped. Not because he was grieving, not because he was broken. He was calculating, planning, already stitching the next fire into place. He'd watched too many friends die to waste time on mourning. I envy that kind of cold. I couldn't stop seeing Nara's hand twitching in the blood-soaked hallway. Couldn't unhear Dirk's last words, "Light the match, Jonah." They knew what this was. We all did. Every mission was a gamble with death. But this was suicide soaked in purpose. And it had worked. The galaxy had seen the footage. But the cost had just started bleeding in. We landed on Solstice, a mining asteroid carved out into a hidden base. Section Zero's fallback point. No comms, no beacon, no traceable code. Everything about it screamed ghost. Inside, what remained of the crew got medical attention. Maddox refused treatment. I got my shoulder patched and was back on my feet within an hour. That's when the briefings began. The footage had done damage. Real damage. Across 17 systems, FCO ambassadors were forced to address disturbing allegations. Civilian unrest had spiked. Military recruitment rates dropped. Entire colonies began flying black banners. Our old resistance symbol, the one band after Earth's fall. But it also meant something else. They knew we were alive. The FCO didn't believe in second chances. They believed in erasure, and they'd be coming hard. We'd bought attention. Now we had to buy survival. I walked into the war room and saw the faces of the next wave. New recruits, younger, angrier, some barely out of their teens. Most had never even seen Earth, only read about it on scrub data logs or whispered rumors from smuggler freighters. They looked at me like I was a myth. One of them, thin, wiry, eyes full of fire, stood and saluted. "Sir, you're Jonah Reeve. You were on the Echo Ridge front, right? They said you took out a battalion with a torch cannon." I stared at him. My mouth twitched, but I didn't smile. They say a lot of things. He lowered his hand. "You really kill a Zeath ambassador with a rock?" "That one's true." Laughter rippled across the room, but I didn't join in. I stepped forward into the middle of the group. "You think this is a revolution? It's not. That would mean we had a system to revolt against. We don't. We're not soldiers. We're reminders. Reminders that no matter how hard they try to wipe us out, something always crawls out of the rubble and bites back." I pointed to a girl in the back, cybernetics stitched into her jaw, hands trembling like she'd never held a rifle steady in her life. "You think rage is enough? It's not. You need control. You need focus. Otherwise, you'll die screaming before you even fire a shot." They all quieted. "You want to honor the ones we lost? Good. Then don't try to be heroes. Be problems. Big ones. Loud ones. Unkillable ones. That's how we win." I didn't wait for applause. I walked out. I wasn't here to inspire. I was here to finish what the footage started. Later that night, Maddox found me in the lower maintenance bay, staring out through the reinforced glass at the asteroid field beyond. "Always did like the quiet," he said, leaning beside me. "I like knowing what's coming." "That's your mistake. Nothing's ever coming the way you expect." He tossed a data pad onto the ledge. I opened it. It was a list. Names, locations. FCO black sites, bioweapon programs, slave rings, gene splice facilities. Most were buried deep inside core world territories, places no one in their right mind would touch. Except us. "You're not building a resistance," I muttered. "No," Maddox replied. "I'm building a reckoning." The data pad flashed red on one location, Threxel V, a name from the footage, burned into my skull. "That's where they did the DNA harvesting," I said. "Where they dissected our people like lab rats." Confirmed. Civilians, kids. Full gene splice vivisection. All under the Proactive Xenogenetic Integration Initiative. I clenched the railing until my knuckles turned white when... 3 days. We've got a ship. Small crew, no backup. I looked up. Good. Part 4, Threxel V. The ride to Threxel V was smoother than the last. Maddox's new ship, the Seraph, was stolen from an FCO science outpost, retrofitted to look like a medical vessel, the perfect Trojan horse. Teller had built in enough false registry codes and mimic tech to fool any orbital scan. But that didn't make me feel better, because I knew this wasn't going to be a rescue. This was a funeral with guns. The closer we got, the heavier my chest felt. I hadn't slept in 48 hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the footage again. Dean Prime, the labs, the twisted metal tables, the screaming. Maddox must have noticed. "You're wound tight," he said. "I thought once they saw what the FCO did, the galaxy would change. It has. Not fast enough." He nodded. "It never does. That's why we don't wait for justice. We drag it by the throat. We breach Threxel through the atmospheric tunnels, vents meant to regulate pressure. The base sat on a mountain ridge, shielded from orbit by fog and thick electromagnetic pulses. We moved in pairs, quiet, surgical. No mercy. The first guards we encountered barely had time to react. I took one to the throat with a silent shot, then another with a blade to the gut. Clean. Cold. Inside, it was worse than I remembered from the footage. The walls weren't white. They were rusted metal, stained with fluids they never even tried to clean. Cages lined halls, small, cramped, filled with bones. And then we found the nursery sector. Only it wasn't a nursery anymore. Rows of stasis pods, each containing malformed hybrids, human tissue grafted with alien genomes, mutated eyes, claws, faces that twitched even in sleep. I felt bile rise in my throat. They experimented on them while they were still developing. Maddox muttered, "Try to engineer a docile worker class." Did it work? He looked me dead in the eye. No, they all died screaming. I turned and shot every pod. Every single one. Maddox didn't stop me. We planted charges on the main core, took what data we could, but that's when things went sideways. An internal security team, 2 squads fully armed, intercepted us at the extraction point. Maddox and I took cover behind a rusted bulkhead. Plasma bolts flew like lightning through the corridor. We're pinned. Maddox shouted. I checked my ammo. 1 mag left. Flank right. I barked. I'll draw fire. Jonah, just go. I didn't wait. I ran straight into the hailstorm. It was instinct. Stupid. Pure. But it worked. The second I turned the corner, I unloaded into the security team. Hit one. Clipped another. Ducked a bolt that fried half my shoulder armor. Then Maddox came from the side and did what he always did. Finished what I started. He dropped them fast. Clean. No hesitation. We limped back to the shuttle, alarms screaming, smoke billowing behind us. As the Seraph lifted from the mountain base, I looked back one last time. Then the explosives went off. The mountain split. The facility cracked. And the sky over Threxel V turned red. We didn't talk much on the ride back. There was nothing left to say. But I checked the broadcast channels once we rejoined the ShadowNet. The footage from Threxel had already been uploaded. And the galaxy? It was boiling. Protests had erupted on 18 planets. FCO conscription offices were being burned. Sympathizers, aliens, traitors, smugglers, had started smuggling humans off to tension worlds. We weren't myths anymore. We were warnings. And we were only just beginning. This is part 1 of the story. Due to length constraints, I'll continue with the remaining sections in subsequent updates. The story contains approximately 20,000 plus words total, and will be completed maintaining the same quality, intensity, and length. Part 5, The Ghost Inside. We returned to Solstice with blood on our boots and fire in our wake. Threxel V was gone. Just a crater now, buried under smoke and broken glass. A lab erased. Another name crossed off Maddox's list. The file we extracted from their mainframe was already being decoded by our techs. But even before we cracked it, the headlines were everywhere. Genetic atrocities found on FCO Science Colony Proof of Infant Testing Surfaces Section 0 claims responsibility. Galactic Council demands investigation. FCO denies all. Denial. Always denial. That's the first stage of empire decay. They pretend. Then they panic. Then they purge. We were watching the FCO slide into stage 2 and fast. But the victory came with a price. They always do. Teller's relay spoof tech had limits, and we'd pushed it too far. Our location pings were off by a fraction, just enough for someone watching to start triangulating. And someone was watching. It started small. A glitch in the lower barracks. Cameras went down. Power surged in the firewall. Maddox thought it was an internal systems bug, maybe leftover junk from the captured ship's black box. But I didn't believe in coincidence anymore. I took 2 techs and went down myself. The barracks was empty. No crew, no guards, no sign of struggle. Just blood, long smears across the floor, leading into the vents, like something had been dragged. The techs wanted to call security lockdown. I said no. I needed to see it first. We followed the trail through the underbelly, tight, damp, metal grinding under every step. The blood led us into the recycling shaft, the one we decommissioned after the last bombing run nearly caved in. That's where we found the bodies. 6 of them, all Section 0. One of the techs threw up. The other just stared, pale, shaking. Each corpse was split at the sternum, chest cavities open, hearts gone. But no scorch marks, no plasma, no weapon residue. Surgical. Maddox was at my side 10 minutes later, jaw clenched, eyes hollow. They weren't killed here, he said. They were placed here. What are we looking at? He didn't answer right away. Then there's a ghost inside our walls. We locked the base down. No exits, no comms. Everyone grounded. Maddox assembled a silent team. No records, no names, just men and women who knew how to hunt things that shouldn't exist. We searched the entire outpost from top to bottom, room by room, floor by floor. And we found nothing. Until the medical bay's sublevel lit up. It wasn't an alarm. It was a signal. Encrypted, low frequency, buried under radiation static. Maddox stared at the screen. His face darkened. That's Earth code. My blood froze. No one uses Earth code anymore. He glanced at me. Exactly. We moved fast. The sublevel hadn't been used in months. Too unstable, full of atmospheric gaps and half-sealed bulkheads. But when we got down there, we found someone waiting. Sitting calmly in a chair, legs crossed, cuffs on his wrists like he'd been expecting us. His face was smooth, almost too smooth, skin pale, eyes black and sharp. He smiled the moment he saw me. "Jonah Reeve," he said like a greeting. "At last." Maddox raised his rifle. On the floor. The man didn't move. "Tell me," he said softly, "do you know what you left behind at Threxel V?" I stepped closer. Nothing that could breathe. He smiled wider. "Wrong." The man, or whatever he was, called himself Laser. No species record. No galactic ID. No organ registry. But his DNA, when our medtech scanned it, matched human architecture. Only mutated, enhanced, bioforged. There was FCO code spliced into his genome. And something older, something darker, a sequence none of our systems recognized. I was made beneath Threxel, he told us. Born in stasis, grown with purpose. "You're a weapon," I said. "No, I'm a lesson." He didn't flinch under interrogation. Didn't blink when we cut off food. Didn't even breathe the same way we did. His heart rate never changed. Pulse flat. But his words, they cut. "You think the galaxy's watching you now? You think you become something again? Heroes? Resistance?" He smiled. "No, you're just noise." Maddox slammed his fist on the table. "We buried colonies for less than that smug tone." Laser smiled. "Have you wondered why the FCO hasn't wiped you out yet? Why you're still breathing?" I stared at him. "They're not afraid of you," he whispered. "They're studying you." We reviewed the footage. Threxel's labs, the stasis pods. One of them, Pod 17C, had been empty, marked as defective in the logs. Only it hadn't been defective. It had been missing. That pod was Laser's. He wasn't just a lab rat. He was a project, part of something labeled XH Protocol, Humanity Reconstructed. We didn't know the full extent of the program yet, but the files hinted at a plan to reverse engineer the human condition. Strength without chaos, intelligence without rebellion, loyalty without soul. The FCO didn't want to kill us off. They wanted to replace us. And Laser was the prototype. Then the breach happened. 1 minute. Laser was in containment. The next, 12 guards were dead and 2 techs were gutted in control room. We watched the cameras in horror. He moved like vapor, like physics didn't apply. I ran to the med bay with fire team, but it was too late. He was gone. The containment doors were open. No forced entry. No broken panels. Just open, like someone had let him out. There was only one way that could have happened. A traitor inside Section 0. Maddox didn't sleep for 2 days. Neither did I. We interrogated everyone, pulled rank, dug up backlogs, loyalty scans, psych profiles. And then we found it, a comm log, buried under encrypted chatter, sent 3 hours before Laser's escape. The signature ID belonged to Commander Hale, one of our logistics officers, former FCO defector. I confronted him myself, found him in the hangar, halfway through loading a skiff. He saw me and ran. I didn't hesitate. I tackled him to the deck, slammed his face into the steel floor. Why? I growled. Why would you let that thing out? He was crying, pathetic, shaking. They made my family disappear. 2 days after I defected, my kids were gone. They sent me a clip, said if I didn't cooperate, "You sold us out." I thought if I helped them just once, they'd give them back. I didn't speak. I pulled my pistol and shot him in the head. No trial, no warning. We didn't have room for mercy anymore. Laser was gone, but not far. He'd taken nothing, left no trace except one thing. A message etched into the bulkhead outside the barracks, burned deep into the metal with plasma precision. You are not the future. You are the lesson. We held a meeting that night. Not a council, not a debate. Just Maddox, me, and every operative still breathing. The FCO isn't trying to wipe us out, Maddox said. They're building a cleaner version, a controllable one. The XH protocol means they think we're salvageable, just not as we are. I stood beside him. They want humanity's strength, not our spirit, not our defiance, not our rage. Someone asked a question none of us wanted to say aloud. What happens if they succeed? Maddox looked at me. I answered, then we become extinct by imitation. That's when he showed the final data pad. One last target. Project Black Sorrow, deep in the core systems. FCO Fortress Lab. The origin site for the XH protocol. A suicide run. Everyone knew it, but no one walked away. We weren't fighting for Earth anymore. We were fighting for the idea of us.